Hi. I am Neil, as introduced by Professor. I'm very excited to be in Taiwan, my first time here. So I'm going to take the next 10 minutes, 15 minutes to really explain what Zaya is. And just to Professor's story, Zaya was not an organization I said I'm going to go and build a company. It's something that came out of my own problem and what I saw around me. So it's an interesting story. It's also the name of my first student in Mongolia. Her name is Zaya. So she inspired me, and that's why the name of the organization. So what are we doing at Zaya? So we're, fonts are wrong. But we're actually trying to change how education is delivered for low-income schools in India by using personalized learning. So how many of you know what personalized learning means? Anyone? Okay. It's good. How many of you all have been to a hospital? Right? Okay. Usually there are many people sitting outside to see a doctor, right? Do you think the doctor gives everybody the same medicine or the same treatment? Why? Everyone has a different problem. The doctor takes some test, some blood test, finds out from the report who has what issue, and then gives the remedy, right? Because each person is different, the solution to fix the problem is different. And the same thing applies when you're in the classroom. But if you go today to a school, and I don't know how it is in Taiwan, but most schools, you see the teacher teaching the same thing to the entire school, the entire class. That's like going to the hospital and getting everybody being treated for the same issue. So what really personalization is making sure every child gets the education, the learning, and the solution that is appropriate to them. Because only then we can help them move forward. So when I went to Mongolia, I couldn't speak the language. I tried hard to learn. But I realized that the only way the children I was trying to teach would learn is through personalized learning. But there were two big issues. So the two big issues was there was no internet connectivity in most of the schools there. So I couldn't use online learning to teach them. And second issue was they didn't trust me. They usually trusted someone in their own community, usually the house moms or some teacher, someone from their village. So I realized that if I had to make them learn, I had to get them to learn from their own people. And I had to make sure I get online learning because there was all that content available online. So that's how I started building a couple of tools, and that's how Zaya came into existence. So the key thing for us was, just like a doctor, I need to have data, right? Data gives me report. Data tells me what's wrong and how to help that child. The second most important thing for us was personalization, making sure the lesson you're getting or the lesson the next child is getting is not the same. It's really different and catered to you. And the third thesis was how to make sure it's actually working. So efficacy means ensuring and checking whether it's working, right? And those three things are very important in education. So that was sort of the foundation for Zaya and all the technology and tool we built to help these children. So here's what that looked like. There was a tool for teachers or facilitators, which allowed them, have you all used iTunes? You all know how everyone has used Apple? Something. You make playlists to listen to songs, right? So we created a tool for teachers to make playlists for each child. So everyone had an individualized playlist. So it was very different for each child. So we started with expert teachers making that, and over time, our technology software learned it and then started making lists by itself. So as the child went from grade 1 to grade 2 to standard 3, the system itself started teaching them. The next thing was for access. Remember I said there was no internet. So how do you deliver online learning without internet? So my background was with Cisco and building technology and routers. So I built this small device which has a battery. It creates Wi-Fi for the whole school. It has the software in it. It has all the content. So you can connect your phone, you can connect a tablet, you can connect a computer to the small device, the Wi-Fi, and then get access to the learning software and content. So that helped us solve the problem of setting up this program anywhere in the world, no matter how remote it is. And the third and the most important part was for the student, like how do we make it fun, interactive for these young children to actually learn and progress. So you can't see it clearly, but each child has sort of like, it's almost like a game. They see what to do next, and it's very unique. So these three things sort of formed our technology backbone. So how did it work? Everything that we create, the content, the tests that we create, everything goes to the cloud. From the cloud, it goes to those small devices I showed you, which we made. That sits in schools, it sits in learning centers, it can sit in an orphanage. And through that, children can actually, no matter where they are, learn in the school, then they can go home and continue learning. They can also now push the same content on their mobile phones. In India, a lot of people now have mobile phones, but they don't have internet on the phone, so they can download all their lessons and learn at home. So this is kind of how we sort of distribute our content. Now what's the most interesting thing, stories that have come out of this, is we collect a lot of information about every child. We know everything you're learning, every answer you gave, every video you watched, every second of what's happening for these children. And remember, these are not children in like a developed country. This is in places with no internet. We have so much information. We said, what can we do to sort of improve the learning, improve the society, right? So we understand who our customer is really well. So by learning what their parents do, how much money the parents make, what's the social economics status of the parent, how we can educate the parent. We collect all that data, same on that device. The next thing is we know, obviously, what they're learning, what content works, what doesn't work, how we can improve every day, every week. The third one is behavioral. So there's a very interesting story from one of our schools where these are parents who we found out are generally taxi drivers in India. So they make maybe $100 a month in salary, and they are not educated themselves. So they take their children out and put them in these schools where Zaya is running. And then they complain, oh, my child is not learning, my child is not learning. They think it is the problem of the school. So what we did was, every day when the child was doing, say, a lesson on math, we would throw one quiz question, kind of like SurveyMonkey would do, and say, did your father give you a hug at home? Or did your mom walk you to school? Did they ask you how your day was? And we changed this question every day. We collected for 1 year a lot of data, just one question a day while learning math. And we found that all the students who did really well, their parents were engaged in their day-to-day activity. Even though they were very poor, the parent actually walked them to school or asked them questions about their school day. And the ones who performed badly were not because the product or program was bad or school was bad. The parents just didn't show that they cared what their child was doing. And we all can relate to it, right? We hear stories where if our parents are involved, we do better. If our parents don't show any love or care, most people don't have the motivation. So we had now data. We had reports showing it. So at the parent-teacher meeting, we could show that and tell the parents, change your behavior by asking these 5 questions every day. And for the parents, this was the first time they actually realized how they can participate in their child's learning. So it was very interesting to collect this information and influence that behavior. So how it works, so we are not, I spent the last few minutes explaining technology, but really this is not like an online system only. We do it in a blended way, which means about 50% is with humans still. There is a teacher in the classroom. There is a teacher who walks around, motivates children to learn, can help them. But what the technology allows them to do is do it well. Just like a doctor with with a blood test report can actually do his job much better, this tool is only helping the teacher to do their job much better. So that's why it's blended learning. It's not online learning. And this model works in all areas. It works in university. It works when you're doing sports coaching, when you're trying to learn music. We have shown that technology and humans can work together to actually improve their quality. So we've seen really good results. It's been about 6 years now since Zaya has been running in many schools. We brought independent people. You remember I said efficacy matters. We want to make sure what we do works. So we brought some independent organizations from US to do a study for 2 years. And they found that our student in the first year actually performs 1.8 times better compared to students who don't do it or not using this. And in the year 2 and year 3, it even becomes better because they're now used to this model of personalized learning. Now, what was interesting is while we collected this data, we found that most parents from disadvantaged backgrounds who are not educated themselves actually value only English learning more because they can't tell math, they can't tell science. So what ended up happening is in about 80% of our schools, only our English courses were getting used the most. So we collected that data and we developed an English app and gave it away for free to all the parents so that the children can learn English at home and come to school and do all the other subjects. We save each school a lot of money just because they don't need internet. So the cost of setting up internet in those schools is about $1,000 in India per year. So we save them all that cost because they don't need internet. So principals and school leaders are very happy usually because they care about savings. So where all are we, right? So we started from few places in Mongolia. I'm only covering India right now, but we've grown to over 200 plus schools that are using our entire program for learning math, science, English. We have about 150,000 students, and the amount of online content and number of hours of lessons we have delivered are now, it increases every day. It's over 3 million hours last we checked. And we are slowly expanding this to other countries by taking the same technology, just changing the content in different language. So we are launching even in South America next year, where they will use Zaya's product, change it into Spanish, and deploy it there. What's interesting in these two stories, the top one is a school in the Himalayas in India, where to get to the school, you have to walk 8 hours. So there's no electricity. The school put solar panels to run this program. So there are now 5 villages running our program in the most rural parts of India. And then we have children even in cities who are learning really well. Now I'll talk a little bit about the business model because as Professor mentioned, we started off as a non-profit because I told you I didn't want to start a company. So the first thing you think about helping people who have lesser than you is a non-profit organization. But we found that is not very sustainable. You have to keep raising donations and funds, and I hate doing that. I am an engineer, so I like to build stuff. So what happened is we figured I can just build some technology and ask people to pay for it who can afford. So in the first year itself, when I was in Mongolia, we had World Bank and few organizations who started using that technology to train vocational education, train doctors. So that business model, we realized, can be set up as a company itself, the technology that was developed. So we took all the technology, all the intellectual property, and created a social enterprise. So we have 2 organizations. We have the nonprofit still, which does teachers training, does all the development. Then we have the company that creates technology, does the innovation, provides it for a very affordable rate. So all these students that you saw actually pay us $1 a month. So it's not free, but $1 a month from 150,000 students is over $1 million a year. That covers all our costs. So that helps us innovate, add more content, add more language. So it's very interesting, the business model has evolved. So even what I'm showing here is over the last 6 years, we have had different people pay us. First, the content partners used to pay us to get content out on our boxes. So we used to take a fee from them when we gave our technology. Then came schools who buy it for their schools. Now parents are paying directly $1 a month. So we really have figured out, we didn't have an answer when you start a company. Over time, we figured out what makes the organization sustainable. So we are constantly looking at ways to become sustainable and be a profitable social enterprise. This is sort of our growth. We couldn't have done it by ourselves. So 2014, really small to, last year, we've had DBS Bank, who gave us a grant to allow us to build certain products and do research. Microsoft gave us an affordable access award. So that device you saw, now we've made a cheaper version, which we're going to set up about 500 schools with that. So it's really cheap. For $100, we are going to set up in all schools. So we have had, like blended learning, blended financing. So we have had organizations give us grant. Some have actually given us investment and taken equity. Pearson has done it. But because we've gone through this journey over 6 years, we've found that there's no one answer for a social enterprise. What we know is we are, as Zaya, very committed to solving the problem of education, and we will do whatever it takes to do it. So if that means equity financing or grants, we are ready to take both, and also make our beneficiaries pay for it. And the last bit is sort of this year, our evolution. Like I said, we built some very interesting technology tools, and it's no longer now helping low-income schools in India. It's being used by India's largest music school. They deliver music education, but they did it the old way. One teacher teaching the same thing to 50 kids, how to play the guitar. So they are using our software to teach music in 400 schools. We have a group, an institution that's doing sports education. Again, everything is individual, so they're using our software to do sports education. So we are really seeing that as Zaya has evolved over the 6 years, we've moved from a pure social helping grades 1 to 5 to really creating something valuable that can solve a lot of problems in learning, right? And that will really help us stay alive for the next 50 years, because I want to be around 50 years later, look back and see Zaya still around, right? So I think that's the mission we are looking at, and looking at opportunities to license our software. So that's about it. Thank you so much, and hope this was useful.